Welcome back to Chicago Now. Gabriella Pomare is an award-winning family lawyer and author of a new book, The Collaborative Co-Parent, Co-Parenting Made Dignified, Simple, and Collaborative. With almost 50% of all marriages in the U.S. ending in divorce or separation, co-parenting is something many of us have to deal with. So Gabriella joins us with more this morning with some advice. Hello, how are you?
Hello and good morning, and what a lovely name you have.
No kidding, right? And look how beautiful she is. Thank you very much. I've been saying all show, okay, this is another Gabriella, but she's much better because she's an award-winning lawyer. You know what? I want to get right into the conversation with your book. Obviously, you saw a need through your practice that people needed to have some, maybe a guide for co-parenting.
Absolutely. Look, I'm a family lawyer, but I'm also a co-parent myself. So I separated when my son was only 1 year old. And I think I woke up every day saying, we don't have anything practical. Parents need a real practical roadmap every day to guide them through how to separate amicably, how to try and keep that relationship going in a low conflict manner, and how to protect their children. So that's why I wrote the book, to really protect the children of separation and divorce.
So what do you mean? Are you going step by step with people? Or are you giving little tidbits of advice? How does it actually run down through the book?
Absolutely. It's a really practical book. It's less law and it's more everyday life. And it starts with what I do. I wake up the first day I've separated. Is this my life now? It's not something I was expecting. How do I start over? So we start with that. We then go through who do I tell, going to school, and then we go through the different developmental stages of children. So dealing with separation of very young children, school-age children, and then teenagers. And we work through to, you know, blended families, step parenting, having new children as life goes on. And then lastly, we talk a little bit about what options are out there in terms of mediation, collaborative law, and working together.
You know, what would you say is probably the biggest obstacle for people who are co-parenting?
Conflict in communication. I think the most difficult part of any separation is the emotion that comes with it. The reality is when you first separate, you are dealing with so much grief, anger, there might be heartbreak, and you need to be able to separate that from, hang on, I've got these children I still need to take care of. So when you're engaging in communication with your ex or your co-parent, I always say slow things down. Try not to bring the conflict into that communication. I talk about 4 pillars of communication in my book, and it's all about stopping and reflecting and pausing before you respond, you know, not shooting from the hip and sending that angry text message because you're still angry. Keep your child at the forefront of your mind. Every decision you make, every text you send, that is so important.
Yeah, you know, maybe even, a lot of people say, you know, should I keep my kid out of the conversation? You know, do you still give advice to parents to, you know, if you're not going to say something good, don't let them hear it?
That's absolutely right. And I think the difficulty is when you do separate, you often try and befriend your child. So I have a lot of clients I work with who end up becoming best friends with their children, and they want to tell them everything. You know, they're their emotional outlet. But that causes more problems. It creates, you know, conflict within a child and guilt. And they often start panicking within themselves. Was I the cause of the divorce? Can I fix this? So the biggest thing I can say is keep them out of it. Don't use them as a messenger. Children shouldn't be used to send messages back and forth between parents, because again, that creates anxiety within them. And what we know is a child's experience of their parents' separation and divorce really impacts their future. You know, their adult relationships, their marriages, how they parent into the future. So the way you control the situation and the way you involve your children in your separation is going to have such a big impact. So you need to remember that in every decision that you make.
Would you say it makes as much of an impact on your life if you're having your parents separate when you're a teenager in high school versus you're really young, like 1 or 2, or is it kind of the same feelings across the board?
I think the reality is it's how you're involved in that separation and divorce and what you know about it. So if you're heavily involved, if you're told about the breakup, you know, who might have had an affair or who cheated, I think that's going to have a really detrimental impact on you moving forward. And that will negatively impact the way you deal with relationships moving forward. I think for any child, whether young or old, it's important that parents speak to children honestly, answer their questions, give them that safety and stability. But at the same time, you don't need to be too honest. Children don't need to know absolutely everything. What they need to know is that they're loved, that they're going to have stability and security, security that their entire life isn't being blown up. So, yes, they're probably moving out of the family home. They're now going to be going between two homes, but they're still going to have two stable homes with two parents who love them. And if I can say this as a parent, and it's really difficult when you separate, allow your child to talk about their other parent and their other home when they're with you. That's so important. A child needs to feel comfortable speaking to you about their other home.
That is good advice. You know, Gabriella, I might be getting into the weeds a little bit too much, but I think another thing we often hear is that, oh, my parents waited until I was out of high school, even in college, to separate, even though they wanted to for years. Do you think that your book might be a good guide for those couples who are thinking, I'm going to push it off, but because they're worried about their kids', outcome?
Absolutely, and that is because they're being child focused, but I think it's a real mistake. I think people seem to say, I'll stay together or we'll stay in the family home together because that's going to create the stability for my child. But children aren't silly, they know what's going on. And I think it's far worse for a child to be in a home with high conflict when their parents can't get on, when they're not having dinner at a dinner table together, or when they're not sharing a bedroom. That's going to create more confusion for a child. So my view is, if you're in the two homes, but you're still communicating without the conflict, you're showing up, you're giving that child stability, it's going to be far better from them. So if you grab a copy of the book, it does take you through that journey. And no, it's not all bells and whistles. It's not perfect. Separation is hard. And co-parenting certainly doesn't happen overnight. Take it from me. It's a journey. But once you start that journey and over time, and once you allow yourself to heal, it does become easier.
I know that you'd mentioned already, but how can introducing a new partner or even a step parent be done without making your child feel like they're stuck in the middle?
Yeah, look, introducing a new partner is one of the most sensitive transitions in post-separation life. Kids don't see your new relationship through the lens of romance necessarily. They're going to see it through the lens of security, and they're going to wonder, does this change my place in your life, and do I still come first? So I think the most important thing you can do is really place it slowly, intentionally. Children don't need to meet every single person you date. I think wait until the relationship is stable, consistent, long-term before bringing your child in, your new partner into the picture with your child. And then when the time feels right, I think begin it with a low pressure introduction. So what I tell a lot of people is bump into each other at a cafe, go for an afternoon walk or a park date. You don't need to do the big, reveal at dinner or a forced family day out. That's often difficult for children. And after they've met, check in with your child. And it's not about seeking their approval, but it's about giving space for their feelings, making sure they're okay.
That's good advice. Maybe they're already in two separate houses, and like you said, going between home to home, as we hear very often. How do you help kids feel settled between those homes? What are mistakes that people typically make, and how can they reverse them?
Yeah, I think the changeover between the two homes is the most important part. So when you're at that changeover, children notice everything, eye rolls, the sighs, the pauses, the rushed goodbyes, the conflict between the parents. So if you can do anything, make that transition really smooth. The other tips I always give parents are create consistency. So try and keep the routines the same amongst houses, bedtimes, breakfast habits, anything familiar. Give children control where you can. Let them choose items they might want to bring back and forth. Children might want to bring a special toy, a pillow, a piece of clothing. And I think that control for them helps regulate their own anxiety. Build a transition ritual. So I know that when my son heads off to his dad's, I try and send a message over saying, love you, have fun at dad's. That's really important. That consistency, and avoid a loyalty trap. Don't make your child feel guilty for going to their other parent's home, and don't compare your parenting style. That can be really difficult.
I'm thinking of holidays coming up, Thanksgiving, Christmas, even Halloween, because it's a big family event as well. How are parents navigating that, or how should they navigate those holidays?
Firstly, don't compete. It's not about who threw the bigger or better Halloween, the bigger or better Thanksgiving or Christmas. It's about consistency and a child knowing they can go between homes. So plan early. If you're not having Christmas lunch, do Christmas Eve. And it's okay to create new traditions, get matching pajamas, have the hot chocolate, watch the carols the night before. Just create something new for your child that still gives them that excitement of the holiday, but makes them feel okay for not being with one of their parents. And try not to create conflict at the holiday time. There's nothing worse for a child than made to feel be made to feel really guilty about being with their other parent during a holiday period, especially Christmas, Thanksgiving. So that'd be my main advice. Plan early, avoid conflict, and be flexible with your co-parent. The holiday's about being flexible. It's not about you, it's about your child.
I think we often hear, and probably same with you, that sometimes you separate, you have different ages of kids, and kids are dealing with it, at least at the moment, differently than the other. How should parents deal with one who might be really angry, another one who might seem like they're coping well, and you want to keep that track going?
Yeah, I think it's really important to continue checking in with your children. So even if at the beginning of a separation they seem like they're okay, or the opposite, and they're very angry, a few weeks or a few months, check in regularly. How are they feeling? How are they going? Look for the warning signs. So, are they still doing well at school? Are they seeing their friends? Are they still social? You'll see when a child starts to drop off, and it might be that they need, some external assistance, and there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of parents shy away from therapy, from school counselling, but it might be that's what your child needs, and that's okay. So if it looks like your child isn't coping, for example, reach out and get them that therapy or that assistance. That is important. And otherwise, make time for one-on-one time with each of your children. So it might be that you have a movie date with a younger child just to check in on them, and then you might take your older child out for lunch or for dinner on the weekend, or do something that's enjoyable to them. That's really helpful.
Okay, the collaborative co-parent. Gabriella, thank you so much. Real quickly for the audience, where can they find your book? And then also, can they follow you anywhere on social media?
Absolutely. Instagram, I share a lot of tips and videos at Collaborative Co-Parent. My website, you can buy the book, www.thecollaborativeco-parent.com. Barnes & Noble, Amazon, everywhere online.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us and talking about this important topic.
Thank you for having me. It was a great chat.
We look forward to having you back. Okay, switching gears.